Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June 8th, 2018 edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. Today's topic, we are finally, I feel like it's been a decade in the making, talking about the QuickBooks Payroll API. Our special guest today is Priya. She's brought around the rest of her team. She's going to give a little presentation about the new payroll APIs. She is going to and then we'll open it up to any Q&A after the fact. I know some of you are still streaming in. It's okay. We haven't started anything important yet. I'm going to cover a couple housekeeping slides, and then we'll get things handed off to Priya. So give me a moment here, if my click works. There you go. So you're down to 68 days. For those of you that need to submit your app to the Small Business App Showdown, you have 68 days to get your app on apps.com and register for the App Showdown. Do not wait till day 67 to do this. You need at least about 30 days of elbow room. So you want to be shooting at anywhere between July 1st and July 10th to maybe July 15th at the latest to submit your app for publishing on apps.com, because you still have to go through the tech review, the security review, the marketing review, and the legal review. And so assuming you have to do any rework, you need to build that into your schedule. So if you come in on day 68, the day before the final day, you will not make it. So keep in mind, you want to shoot for July 15th is probably the absolute latest. And that's assuming everything goes perfect for you to get you published in time for the contest. So go to Small Business App Showdown and get signed up. And don't forget QuickBooks Connect. So what we're doing is there's developer content at QuickBooks Connect, so mark down your calendars. The weekend before, we'll probably do a hackathon again. And then at QuickBooks Connect, we're taking 10 of the finalists from the App Showdown, bringing to QuickBooks Connect. You get to pitch in front of a panel of judges, and the winner's taking home that $100,000. You also get booths, so you get really a presence at QuickBooks Connect. So it's a good way for newer developers to get connected with the entire ecosystem of the QuickBooks ecosystem. So we'll have accountants there, we'll have small businesses there, we'll have bookkeepers there, we'll have entrepreneurs there, we'll have developers there, and self-employed. So we're getting the full ecosystem all under one roof. And then just like this event and all events, you can always find them on the developer site. So it's developer.intuit.com/hub/events. And you can sign up for any of the events and conferences that we have coming up. I know I'm a little bit behind. I've been on vacation, been out of office, some travel. I need to get some of the next upcoming Hangouts up on the site. So if you go there right now today, it's going to look like nothing's happening. But I will get those up so you guys can take advantage of those things. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing here. And Priya, if you wanted to come off mute.
Hey.
Hey, Priya. So welcome. I think this is your third, fourth maybe Hangout you've done. I'm not sure. It's been a couple. And I see you brought your team. Did you want to introduce the team you brought with you today?
Sure. I'll start with myself and let the team go after me. So I'm a product manager in the Intuit developer group. My focus is primarily on APIs for third-party developers. And payroll APIs will be the first of our next-gen APIs. You've probably heard about V4 many times that will be rolled out. So the intention for today's meeting was for me to walk through, tell you what's on the pipeline for the payroll APIs, and also get your inputs and feedback. Over to you, Peter and Rick. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. My name is Peter Lavelle. I'm an engineer in the developer group. Also working with Priya to take these APIs public. So really excited to get everyone's feedback today and going forward.
Hi, I'm Rick Marsh. I'm a developer in the payroll group at Intuit. So I've worked on probably most of the payroll V4 APIs. So I'm interested too to get feedback on how we've done.
Got it. Thank you, everybody. Priya, I think you were going to do a little presentation first. So while you're setting up your screen to share, I'll just remind everybody, if you have any general discussions about the weather, et cetera, please use the chat panel. If you have any Q&A that's specific to today's topic or our guest, please put them in the Q&A panel so I can get those asked on air. Peter, somebody did make a comment that your audio was a little weak. Can you talk again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, it feels a little muted. I don't know if you're too far away from your microphone.
Okay, let me try to fix that.
And then Priya, if you could do a Control+ or just to zoom in a little bit, or I think on Apple's it's like an Apple something.
Better.
That's a little bit better, yeah. That'll work.
Awesome. All right.
Got it. And I'm going to go on mute and stay out of your way. So, and if anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A panel on the way. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, let's get started. So before I dive into the APIs, I actually just want to do a quick walkthrough of the UI and how the small businesses will use the payroll functionality in the UI, and then I can switch over to the APIs itself. So once a small business has decided to use payroll and they come in and set up payroll within QuickBooks, one of the top activities that they do is add an employee and manage that employee inside QuickBooks. So just wanted to quickly show you what that looks like in the QuickBooks UI. Okay, great. So here I've already set up an employee, but this is when, as part of the setup flow, a small business would typically come in and set up their employee. A couple of important things that they would do here is, yes, they would enter what the frequency of the monthly payment would be, or frequency of the paycheck would be, and also the salary. Now, here you can also specify additional pay types for a given employee. So in this case, I have checked sick pay and overtime pay as the two supported pay types in addition to the salary itself. They can go in and choose any of the available boxes here. The other piece that they would enter or add here or configure here would be the type of deductions. So what type of deductions does this employee, I support for this employee? So here you can always add a new deduction. So I'm choosing a type of deduction or contribution. This could be a new type. Let's say we're going to choose something for a retirement plan, and it would be a 401k. So once you specify what type of plan it is, and then either the small business can go and enter, the small business owner can go and enter what the absolute amount should be. So every month I want to deduct $100 with a paycheck from this employee's paycheck. Or it could be a percentage of gross pay. So I want to give it as 2% of the gross pay is what I want to deduct. And you can also specify an annual maximum. So these are some of the things. Okay, let me enter this because it will not work otherwise. So these are some of the details that a small business would do as part of their setup flow, is create employees and add the deductions and the supported pay types for a given employee. And once they are done with that, one of the other top actions used by small businesses inside payroll is the ability to go and run payroll. So when they go in and run payroll, look for this to open. Okay, try this again. Okay, there you go. Just a little slow. So when they go to run payroll, here's what they would see. So in this screen, this is the one that's used to calculate what the paycheck for a given employee would be. So what the two important pieces of information that are available here, one is the amount of time an employee has worked and the type of the pay type as well. So if they worked 8 hours of employee, then their total pay would be like $11.52, depending on their hourly salary or their total salary, and then the overtime hours. So if it's 2 hours, then your total pay is going to change as well. So these are some important pieces of information. What you don't see, or probably it should have got that configured here as well, is any deduction amount that should go. So if I go to preview payroll for this particular employee, then I should see, okay, now I enter the bank account. So if you go to preview payroll for this particular employee, then you would be able to see what the actual paycheck is for this employee. And that's based on the number of hours they have worked, the number of overtime hours, sick pay hours they have taken, the total deduction on their monthly paycheck as well. So now if this is the run payroll, the small business actually does the run payroll activity based on the frequency of pay. So it could be twice a month, once every month, what have you, whatever they've configured it as. So this at a high level will talk about what the actions of the small business takes. So now let's talk about a scenario where the small business has a third-party application that will allow them to manage time or manage their deductions or benefits that they offer to their employees. So the experience in that case would be the small business will still come and create the employee, configure the employee within QuickBooks Online. The employees will go into a third-party application to enter time or to enter what their monthly deduction should be. That's where they manage their deductions, their 401k plans, or their medical, dental insurance, deduction amounts. So they would actually manage that within the third-party app. So when the small business owner wants to run payroll, let's say at the end of the month, what they would have to do in that case would be they actually have to log in into the third-party app so that they can tally up and verify the amounts or the number of hours or the deduction amounts and manually enter them into payroll. So that is what's happening today. That's the experience today. And we've heard from our small business owners as well as from you developers that this is a pain point, and this is one of the most requested features by our customers, by our mutual customers. So our focus for our first phase of payroll APIs has been the ability to read the pay types, and when you enter time to specify which pay type it falls under. That's one. And the second use case would be the ability to specify what the deduction amount, pension amount, or the benefits amount, the deduction itself should be for a given employee. So I'll quickly go over to Postman so I can show you what that looks like. Give me a second here while I bring up Postman. Okay. So let me bring up employee compensation. So,
and if you could zoom just a little bit more on that, Priya.
Sure, I'll try that
as well.
That doesn't seem to work.
I can't remember on Postman if it's you zoom your browser or if there's you can change the font.
Sure. Not really sure.
All right, if you can't, it's not.
Is it any better?
I think it's gonna be okay. I just made things full screen. I think it's gonna be okay.
Okay. So here's the response you would. So the first API that we are introducing is called the Employee Compensation API. And what this would give you is the list of compensation types supported for every employee in your company. So that would be, so here's example for Mark. I think I pulled up Mark in the UI as well. So for Mark, the supported pay types are, he has regular pay as one of the pay types, hourly 2, bonus, overtime, holiday pay, sick pay. So these are all the available pays that are enabled for employee Mark. The same would show up for every employee, and you can actually specify the compensation types for every employee. So some of them you could say, I'm not going to give them sick pay, and some of them maybe there is a sick pay. So for every employee, you will be able to figure out what are the supported pay types, and it comes back with an ID and the name. So once you have the ID and the name and the employee for whom you're looking this data up for, you can then make a time activity call. So this is a new element that we'll be introducing into time activity. So time activity is an existing V3 API that many of you are probably already using. In today's API, you can specify the total amount of time worked, but you cannot classify what's the type of time that's being worked. So with the payroll item ref, which is a new element we'll be introducing into the API, you can specify for this particular employee, they have worked for these many hours, and that's actually under overtime pay. So that's the new field that we will be introducing into the V3 entity, and the new API in V4 would be, the new API in V4 will be the employee compensation. So together with these two APIs, you should be able to complete the use case where you are able to automatically enter time into the small business's QuickBooks company. And that time is accurate, so it actually reflects what's the type of time it is, what's the pay type that's being used. Any questions so far?
Yeah, as of right now, Priya, the only question that's really came in, actually one just came in. Is the ID required or just the name?
Okay. So here we have the ID and the name. So I think both of them are required in the time activity call. So I guess they're asking about the time activity. So here we have the value, which is the ID and the name. So we will need both.
Got it. Hopefully that was we addressed that, Jack. If not, please ask another question. There's another one coming in about the time activity. So in the time activity, can you call just specific total hours versus a start and end time?
Yes. That's already supported today. You can specify the hours or you can specify the start and end time. So that's still going to be supported. We've just introduced the new field called the payroll item ref, which will specify the pay type.
Got it. And I think that's about it. So just a high level question that came in. People are already wondering when this is going to be available. So people are already asking about it. Then we can adjust. You can address that, I guess, at the end if you want. And then another one just came in about, is this carrying through to the timesheet? Will the weekly timesheet show the payroll item?
So in terms of what will show up in the UI, so if you're just looking at the Qbo UI, you won't be able to look at it. The UI for Qbo does not have the capability to show the type of time, but that's just the Qbo. But if you have payroll enabled, they will be able to see the breakdown of time within payroll. And I think that's where it matters the most when there are payroll employees and you want to cut a paycheck. So you will be able to see once you have payroll enabled as to what's the type of time or what's the pay type enabled and the breakdown of time within payroll.
Got it. And I think that's it for this part as far as questions.
Okay, great. So I'll keep moving on. I think the next set of use case we have is on the deduction. So deduction is broadly 3 different types. So we have benefits, we have what's called benefits, deductions, and pension. So pension, as you all know, would be the 401k plans and the Roth plans that anybody supports. Deductions, and I think, Rick, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I always get confused. Deductions is actually anything that has to do with benefits, anything that has to do with medical, dental, and vision. So that's all goes under deductions. And benefits would be everything else. So let's say if the small business wants to offer everyday payday kind of an activity where they want some other kind of deductions going for like donations for some other type that they offer, that the small business offers, they all fall under benefits. So I think those are the 3 different types of APIs that we support. And they are very, very similar in terms of the API usage itself is just classified as 3 different types and are interpreted differently within Qbo. So I'll just show a quick example of what you can do with the deduction. And the use case that I actually walked you through in the UI would be, so this is a small business owner who supports 401k for its employees. And now the employee can go into that to a third-party application to manage what their deduction amount would be. So if that's what they do, this application will now be able to automatically write that data into Qbo. So keep the contribution amounts, keep the employee deduction amounts up to date inside Qbo when an employee manages it within the app. So the app itself will have the ability to update an employee deduction inside Qbo. And here's what they would be able to do is, this is an example I actually tried it this morning, where you'll be able to specify, you'll first be able to query all the available deductions and identify the deduction ID. And once you have the deduction ID, you can then update the amount. So if you want to change it from 1% to 2%, you can always specify that in your request. So that in this request, you can specify what the amount should be, either it's a percentage or an absolute amount, and then what's the ID of the deduction. So by querying the employer deduction, which is another call here, you can do an employer deduction query all to get all the list of available deductions this employer is configured. And then you can update a given deduction for a given employee. This is the employee ID in this case. And you can specify what the amount is. So this allows the data to be in sync. And so now if this data is updated automatically inside Qbo, when the small business owner wants to go and run payroll, their data is all available. Now they have the time data within QBO, and they also have the deduction amount within QBO. So they don't really have to do any other manual verification, manual entry, and they're ready to go and run paycheck at this point. So what's supported within employee deduction, the APIs that will be available will be update, query all, and query by ID. And these would be specifically the use cases that we will support. So again, I think these were like a quick walkthrough of what APIs will be available. Similar to the deduction, we'll also have the pension APIs. They're very similar to this, and the benefit API. And I walked you through what's the difference for each. So again, the focus for our first phase has been to be able to automate time and also automate deduction, pension, and benefits entry into QuickBooks, so we can save time for the small business owner in terms of make sure that they don't have to do any more manual entry and reduce the number of errors inside QuickBooks. A couple of other things I wanted to mention was this is only supported for US to start with. And these are the two or three use cases that we are planning to support in phase one, but we hope to expand into other functionalities and use cases as we keep going. And we definitely want to hear from you in terms of what other capabilities you'd like to see by the API to support the use cases that you want for your small business.
Got it, Priya. And then, so there's a couple questions coming in. One of the things we can do, I think we did this before on one of the Hangouts, is we'll take all the questions after the fact and try to turn into an FAQ on the blog site. So if in case we don't explain something perfectly in the video, or we need to include a link to some documentation, we'll get all these FAQs as well into the blog post as well. So there's two other questions that came in. This is kind of a follow-up to the timesheets. Mm-hmm. And I think you've answered it whether or not it carries through, but basically the question is, we send our time to the timesheet. Will the payroll items carry through, but they're just not shown in the UI? But is that the difference of it'll be there in the UI if payroll is not turned on, or it won't be there if payroll is not turned on, but if you have payroll, then you'll see it, or is it just doesn't show in the UI at all?
So okay, so this is a subtle difference, and I understand that this could be pretty confusing. So if payroll is turned on, that's when you will be able to see it in the UI. But those values will be available. We will always store those values in the database. We just don't show it in the UI when payroll is not turned on.
Got it. So you could still, as a developer, capture those payroll items if you want. Be sending them through the UI. They're available in case they ever flip payroll on. The data will be there.
Yeah.
Got it.
When you query it via the API, you should still be able to see it.
Perfect.
Query. Okay.
Yeah, so another use case somebody brought up. We do expense tracking as well as time tracking. Will we be able to push reimbursable expenses directly into the payroll API? Right now, we have to make them payable, as requires the user to send their employees a separate payment in order reimbursement. It'd be better if they could just put the reimbursement right on the paycheck.
Great question. Reimbursable charge is something that we are looking at right now. It's not a part of phase one, but we will probably prioritize that for our next phase. But thanks for the question. I think that's a great use case.
And there's another one that says specifically about, I guess we cannot create paychecks. How about querying the paychecks, or will they just be part of the normal checks, as a purchase transaction?
You will not have the ability to query the paycheck. It would be like, I've been trying to figure out use cases where we want to support querying the paycheck, which is actually, the breakdown of different line items on the employee's paycheck. So I would love to learn more about your use case on the ability to query paycheck. We do not prioritize this because because there have not been a lot of developers asking for this specifically. So I can reach out to you after this to understand more about why we want to be able to query that.
Yeah, somebody put a quick comment in the workers' comp compute calculations would be a reason why. somebody's put that as a possible use case. So that's a good feedback to know.
Okay.
Did anybody else have any questions? I feel like, I've been getting emails. When is this coming has been the number one question in my emails for forever. And then the second biggest one is, which I think you're really the main use case you catch, which is I'm a timesheet app and I can't send overtime properly, right? And I think those are so when is it going to be here? Can I send the overtime? So I think as you deliver that, it's going to start expanding out these other questions.
Let me try and address the timing question here.
Okay.
So this is currently in early access. In a couple of months, we hope to start beta for these APIs. Having said that, we'd love to learn your use cases. So do apply for early access. I think David had a link to the early access form.
I'm going to paste it in the chat right now as well.
Okay. So apply for early access, provide your use cases, and also talk about the impact that this is having on your customers today, because that's going to help us choose the right candidates for a closed beta. Once we are done with closed beta, we definitely will open this up for GA and have this available for everybody. The timing of GA is still TBD, but at least closed beta, I'm hoping it will be in a couple of months.
Got just a follow-up question on the ability to see. So I'm just going to read this straight out. Let's listen here. The only thing we care about is the ability for a customer to see the payroll item on the UI. If a customer changes time on the UI without knowing what overtime and what is regular, that could cause everyone a problem, I think.
That's absolutely right. So they will be able to see this in the UI, right? So they will be able to, so when they go to run, so let me stop sharing and share my UI again so I can show you what's happening. Can you see my Qbo UI?
Yep.
Okay, great. So when I hit run payroll and when that screen comes up, so a bit slow, it could just be my network, but give me a second. All right, so this is the UI where they would be able to see the time, right? So so at this UI, you will be able to see only when payroll is turned on for a given company and you want to run payroll. So for this particular employee, you would be able to see whatever time you entered via the UI. So if it's like, I have 8 hours of regular pay, 2 hours of overtime, and 1 hour of sick pay is what was entered via the API. You will be able to see that breakdown here in this UI. And this is the UI that a small business would use to go and before they run the paycheck. So this information will be available to them. And if they still want to go ahead and update it, they can go and update this. But this is data that could be flowing in from the application itself. And they can go and run payroll with this data. Does that help? Does it answer the question?
I think he's asking for clarification. So this is the pay stub, so the paycheck creation screen. But what about on the timesheet screen? So if I'm a developer and if I send this data to the timesheet, can the user see it there so they're not manipulating it or touching it on accident because they can't see it? So can you show how the overtime appears or the payroll item appears on the timesheet in the UI?
So here's the thing and Rick, I don't know if you have additional information on this, but the moment you enable payroll, this is the timesheet screen itself. There isn't a separate timesheet screen as far as I know. When you don't enable payroll, there is a different timesheet screen that you see. I don't have a setup where I can show you that. Let me see. I can stop sharing, create a company. that does not have payroll enabled, then you can show you what the timesheet screen looks like. But once you have payroll enabled, this is what you see in terms of timesheet itself. Like the screen that I showed you is what the timesheet screen looks like. Rick,
Peter, all right, good. I'm sorry. I was going to ask if Rick or Peter had their company set up with timesheets ready to go.
No, I'm not familiar with any other screen for showing this.
Yeah, that's the plain vanilla screen, Rick. So when you don't have payroll enabled, it's a different UI that the small business will see. And what they see there is the total hours. It actually does not show a breakdown. So David, why don't I quickly spin up another company so I can show that screen as well? So just to clarify this question. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
Yeah, well, since I'm in payroll, I never create companies without payroll.
Sure. So we'll get back to this question, David. Are there more questions that?
Yeah, a couple of high-level questions. One question is about if QuickBooks is CPEO, so Certified Professional Employer Organization. This is something I've never heard of before in my entire career. So I don't know, we're just gonna have to add to the FAQs then?
Yes, I think we need to go back and clarify. I mean, we go back and check on this and we can
research on that. Okay, got it. Somebody's wondering if the memo details can be sent through the API as well. I'm assuming the memo on the timesheet.
Yes, I think that is supported today. So we should be that is still supported. Like whatever is supported with timesheet is going to be supported going forward as well.
Okay, got it. And then what people are starting to wonder about, when it comes to tax purposes, any real-time W-2 access or W-2 report access in the future for the API?
Not on the roadmap currently, but I would love to hear your use case more on why you would need access. What would you do with the W-2 access as well? So if you can apply, you can email us directly, or you can apply on early access, whatever. If you're interested in early access with your use case on the W-2 reports, I think that's going to be helpful.
Got it. And then I think this is a overall question on the API. What kind of data can a third-party app query from the API? Can we get a detailed payroll breakdown? So it's moving obviously beyond just sending a payroll item in. What can be queried? Are there reports? Are there other paycheck transactions?
Yeah. So today, with phase one, it's really about solving a specific need for small business, right? And the specific need is automatic data entry. So in that case, what they can do is they can query all the available deductions. You can query all the available pay types. You can write time activity. You can update a deduction amount, and that's deduction, pension, and benefits amount, and query all the available employee deductions. So those are the few use cases that we are enabling right now. Can you get payroll breakdown? So that's basically the elements of the paycheck. And I think somebody else brought up that question before. If you can get a detailed payroll breakdown, which would be the different elements that go on a paycheck, that's not supported right now, but we could possibly look at supporting that in future.
Got it. No other questions are popping in. Rick or Peter, did you guys have any comments or thoughts? You guys have worked on building this.
I just had one quick thought. Priya, we should point out that the terms used in the UI are a little bit different from the terms used in the API to describe pay types and compensations and deductions and so on. I know Priya tried to give examples, but I just can maybe give a few more. So I think if you look in the API, you see the pay types, the hourly, the salary, the bonus, and so on. And in the V4 API, we call these compensations. So there's employee compensations and employer compensations. Then the UI has deductions and contributions. So A contribution would be something probably non-money that the employer is giving to the employee. So use of a company car, and also the health savings accounts come under contributions. And in the V4 API, we have something called a benefit. So the employee and employer benefits cover these two items.
So Rick, are you, obviously you're reading this from somewhere. Is this available for the developers somewhere? Do we have documentation that's early access to the documentation? Even if they're not part of the program, can they at least start reviewing the documentation?
So I'm looking at a couple of things. One is the API documentation. So our API is defined by YAML files where we add documentation as well as the types and so on. So Priya can comment exactly when developers would get access to that, but I know that we have been working on creating a public part of the V4 schema, and so this documentation will be part of that.
Right. And David, this is all still work in progress. So once we have this and we open it up for beta, we will definitely share this with developers who are in the beta program.
Got it. Perfect.
So the other thing that I'm looking at is my own personal notes of how they map. So that's probably something that could be included in a document somewhere that, you know, when you look at the UI, you see this, but when you want to talk to V4, you have to use these categories.
Yeah, I imagine that's going to be an important piece of documentation.
Yes.
Especially for everybody that's been around for a while and is used to calling it A, right? And now it's called C.
Yes.
For sure.
So let me just complete that. So then in the UI, we have things called deductions. And so this is money taken out of the pay. So these would be things like the 401k, like Priya just created one of those. In the V4 API, we have a specific item called pension, so employee and employer pension. So anything related, similar deductions as 401k and all the other, whole family of 403 and so on and so on. They would be in the V4 API, that's known as a pension. Then another deduction would be garnishment. So the employee is ordered, or the employer is ordered by the court to take out money from the paycheck and send it somewhere. And so in the V4 API, we have a separate category called garnishment. So employee and employer garnishment. And then finally, there is in the V4 API a deduction, employee and employer deduction, and that covers everything else, really. So let me give it, and our documentation says, yeah, so these would include all the healthcare deductions, so money taken out for health plans and so on. And within the deductions, there can be matching. Another little thing that gets confusing sometimes, the deduction can have a contribution from the employee and from the employer. So that's that. I just wanted to try to help with that area.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick. So that's something, I guess, just as you know, obviously we need to be very aware of how we document that and make developers aware of that, but developers just need to make sure you're on top of that, because that first time you're going to go use the V4 API, if the nomenclatures are different, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle to get on the same page. So that mapping document would definitely help on that. Got it. There's really not a lot of more questions coming in. We can always wrap up early. Again, I did share the early access login. It's pretty easy to get to. It's help.developer.intuit.com/s/early access login. So I'll put that in the comments of the video when this goes live as well up there. So when it goes on YouTube, I'll have the link there as well. I'll paste it in the chat just one more time in case nobody scrolled too far. So you want to go to that site, guys, and you guys can sign up and become early access. Make sure you put in your use cases, because that's really what's going to determine who gets selected to get early access to the payroll items. the Payroll API. Got it. And I think, oh, some of you want to know if there's an email to send follow-up questions to. Priya, would it be your email address?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay for you to share my email address. That's fine.
Okay. I shouldn't have a copy paste problem. So I'll get it pasted. Do you want to type it in the chat, Priya? I'm trying to get
Yes, I can.
copy paste here.
I'll do it.
And just make sure it's going to all panelists and all attendees. That's all.
Okay.
Perfect. So along with emailing Priya, watch for the blog post, and it's not going to hurt to have a discussion on the blog post as well in the comments section. So without further ado, I think we could probably call it a day. Peter, you were kind of quiet. I don't know if you had any last closing thoughts.
No, I think Priya and Rick did a great job of covering everything. I do have the Qbo timesheet open if you want to take a quick look at that.
Oh yes, if you want to share your screen fast, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So this is what it would look like if you do not have payroll enabled. So hopefully you can see my screen. You can still hear me. But this is basically the weekly timesheet screen. So this is what Priya did not have enabled in her company because it switched to the payroll screen. But this would be kind of a breakdown of the hours.
Hey, Peter, can you zoom in? It's super, super teeny.
Yeah.
Oh, it's much better.
Cool. So yeah, as Priya mentioned, the types of hours are not displayed here. If you do not have payroll turned on, this is what it would look like. But if the small business is running payroll in QuickBooks, they would not see this screen. Instead, they would see the payroll screen instead. So just wanted to share that.
So, Peter, I think there's some confusion, and actually, to be honest, I'm a little confused. A lot of the people in the putting comments in the chat, they have payroll turned on, and they're still seeing the timesheet, and that's always been my experience as well. Like you can still see the timesheet in the UI even when payroll's on.
So you can actually, so when you try to add, you can add a timesheet, but when you click, okay, let me go back and share my screen so I can quickly try that as well.
Okay.
Peter, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to share my screen again.
Yeah, so Priya, just hit the plus sign and make sure you have timesheets in your file.
Yeah. So I just did some changes. So let me bring it up. Okay, here we go. So can you see my QBO?
Yep.
Okay, great. So over here, you can still do single time activity and weekly timesheet if this is what everybody is referring to. So here you would be able to look at this, but in this screen, this is where I'm saying you would not be able to look at, okay, enter start and end times, whatever we have. This UI today does not even support the ability to show different pay types, like how the payroll screen shows, right? So there isn't this concept of this. Okay, let me just give the example with 10 hours. So with 10 hours, you won't be able to specify on this UI whether this is 10 hours of 8 hours of regular pay with 2 hours of overtime. And this screen is not going to change. It's still going to say 10 hours in total. But when you go to run payroll, because that's where that's what's going to affect the paycheck, that's where you will be able to see the breakdown. So that's really the difference between the timesheet here, where you see the total time, but then when you see inside payroll screen, you will actually just see the breakdown there. Is that?
Yeah, I think this helps with the confusion now, because historically speaking, back in the QuickBooks Desktop days, a timesheet would have a payroll item on it, right? And you could specify all the payroll items on the timesheet. And so I think maybe some people had some expectations like you'd be able to see that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and you guys can go back to some of the Hangouts we had from a couple of weeks ago with the V4 APIs. As we're moving forward at the V4 APIs, the API is getting the functionality first, then the UI of QuickBooks is going to be built on top of that API. So we're building this API, the functionality exists, developers will probably get access to it first, and hopefully eventually you'll see this trickle back through to the UI. But it's a little bit difficult too, is because payroll is separate from QuickBooks, so that's another challenge along the way for this. But I think that's the confusion that's been in the conversation here, is why that's still missing here. And so hopefully maybe in the future, or maybe there's enough demand like we have to add it, right? And that's part of the feedback process and having early access. Got it. Hopefully that clarified that finally for everybody, because there's been a lot of comments and questions coming in on that. And definitely some of the comments are, it is a need. So, so we'll have to look at and addressing. Perfect. Priya, Peter, Rick, thank you very much. On that note, I think we're going to close things out. So everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, there will be a blog post with all the FAQs from the session in that blog post. So thanks, everybody. All right, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks.